I am Enrin, a prisoner, though I don't look much different from a human. My skin is pale, my eyes a little too wide, but I could pass for one of them if you didn't look too close. I'm not human though. I'm something else, something from a faraway star. That's why I was on the prison ship, locked up with the worst criminals the galaxy had to offer. Murderers, thieves, monsters from every corner of space. I didn't belong with them, but no one cared about my story. I was just another name on the list. The ship was massive, a floating fortress of steel and cold light. Chains rattled as we moved through the void, guarded by wardens who hated us as much as we hated them. I sat in my cell, staring at the wall. When it happened, a loud bang shook the ship. Alarms screamed. Floor tilted, and my stomach dropped. We were falling. I gripped the bars as the world turned upside down. Metal groaned, voices shouted, and then impact. The crash was chaos. Darkness swallowed me as the ship hit the ground. My cell broke open, and I slammed into the wall, pain shooting through my ribs. When I opened my eyes, smoke filled the air. Sparks flickered from torn wires. Bodies lay everywhere. Some prisoners, some wardens, most dead. The ship was a wreck, split open like a cracked egg, its guts spilling onto the surface of this strange planet. I crawled out, coughing, my hands sinking into soft, wet dirt. The air smelled wrong, sharp, and bitter, like rotting fruit. I stood and looked around. The planet was a nightmare. Twisted trees stretched into the sky, their trunks black and slick, like they were coated in oil. Their branches hung low, heavy with leaves that glowed faintly green, casting an eerie light. A thick fog clung to the ground, swirling around my feet. It was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no birds, just the sound of my own breathing. Others were alive too. I saw them stumble out of the wreckage, prisoners and wardens, dazed and bloody. There were about 20 of us left. The prisoners were a mix of species. A hulking crag with 4 arms and jagged teeth. A sly Veth with scales and claws. A few humans with scarred faces. The wardens were mostly human, their uniforms torn, gripping broken rifles. I stayed back, watching. I knew what came next. It didn't take long for the fighting to start. The crag roared and charged the warden, smashing him into the dirt. Blood sprayed. A Veth prisoner slashed at another guard with its claws, laughing as the man screamed. The wardens fired back, their guns cracking through the silence. I ducked behind a twisted tree, my heart pounding. I wasn't one of them. Not a killer, not a soldier, but I had to survive. 2 groups formed fast. The prisoners, wild and angry, banded together, led by the crag, who called himself Torv. The wardens stuck close. Their leader, a tall man named Kel, with a cold stare, I didn't join either side. I hid in the shadows of the trees, moving quietly, scavenging what I could. Water packs, a cracked knife, a torn blanket. The groups clashed again and again. Torv's crew ambushed the wardens at night, killing 2 with bare hands. Kel's men set traps, luring prisoners into pits spiked with metal scraps. Bodies piled up. The forest drank their blood. Days passed, maybe a week. I lost track. The fog never lifted, and the glowing leaves made it hard to tell day from night. The trees seemed alive, their branches shifting when I wasn't looking. I found a cave, small and damp, and made it my shelter. I watched the groups from a distance, stealing food when they slept. They hated each other too much to notice me. Then everything changed. I was in my cave, chewing on a stale ration bar, when I felt it, a chill down my spine. I looked out and saw nothing but fog and trees. But I wasn't alone. Something moved in the dark, fast and silent. It wasn't a prisoner or a warden. My wide eyes caught a shape, just for a second. Tall, thin, almost like smoke, with limbs too long for its body. It vanished before I could blink. My hands shook. I wasn't imagining it. The next day, one of Torv's men went missing. They found him later, hanging from a tree, his chest ripped open, his eyes gone. No blood on the ground, just the body, pale and empty. The prisoners blamed the wardens. Torv roared and led a charge, smashing through the warden's camp. 3 died in the fight, 2 prisoners, 1 guard. But then a warden disappeared too. They found her the same way, dangling from a branch, guts spilling out. I saw it happen once. I was crouched behind a rock, watching Kel's group argue over a map. A shadow moved behind them, silent like a ghost. It grabbed the guard, lifting him off the ground. He didn't even scream. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone. The others didn't notice until they saw the empty space where he'd stood. Panic spread. The groups kept fighting, but now they were scared. Torv's crew lost 2 more. Kel's men lost 3. The forest was picking us off, one by one. I stayed hidden, but I knew I couldn't run forever. The creatures, whatever they were, watched us. I felt their eyes in the dark, glowing faintly like the leaves. They didn't make a sound, not a whisper. That was the worst part. One night, I couldn't hide anymore. I was scavenging near the wreckage when Torv grabbed me. His massive hand closed around my neck, lifting me off the ground. His breath stank of rot. "You're with us now, freak," he growled. I didn't argue. I couldn't. He dragged me to his camp, where the prisoners glared at me. They didn't trust me, but they needed bodies. The creatures were closing in. The wardens were desperate too. Kel sent a man to talk, a skinny guard with a limp. He stood at the edge of Torv's camp, hands up. "We die if we keep this up," he said. "Something's out there. We need to fight it, not each other." Torv laughed, but the others didn't. They'd seen the bodies. They knew he was right. It wasn't easy. The prisoners hated the wardens. The wardens hated the prisoners. They argued, shouted, threw punches. Torv wanted Kel dead. Kel wanted Torv in chains, but the forest didn't care. Another prisoner vanished that night, and we found him at dawn, torn apart. That did it. They stopped fighting each other, for now. I stayed quiet, watching them plan. They set a trap near the wreckage, using a dead body as bait. We hid in the trees, weapons ready, knives, clubs, a few guns. My hands shook as I gripped my cracked knife. The fog thickened. The leaves glowed brighter. Then it came. It was taller than I'd thought. Its body, like smoke, stretched thin. Its arms dangled past its knees, ending in claws that glinted like ice. Its face, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale, nothing. It moved toward the bait, silent as death. My heart stopped. Kel fired first, the gunshot loud in the stillness. The bullet hit, and the creature flinched, black liquid oozing from its side. Torv charged, swinging a metal pole. It struck the thing's head, and it staggered. We all attacked, prisoners and wardens together, screaming, stabbing, shooting. The creature lashed out, its claws slicing a Veth in half. Blood sprayed, but we kept going. I stabbed its leg, my knife sinking deep. It turned, fast, and I saw those claws coming for me. Kel grabbed me, pulling me back just in time. Torv roared and smashed its chest, cracking something inside. Black ooze poured out. It fell, twitching, then went still. We stood there, breathing hard, covered in sweat and blood. One of them was dead. The rest of us stared at each other. Prisoners and wardens, enemies turned allies. No one spoke. The forest was quiet again, but I knew it wasn't over. Those things were still out there. Days later, a rumble shook the sky. I looked up through the glowing leaves and saw it. A military ship, engines roaring as it landed near the wreckage. Soldiers poured out, guns raised, shouting orders. The prisoners froze. The wardens cheered. I knew what it meant. For them, rescue. For me, chains. They rounded us up fast. Torv fought, but a soldier stunned him with a baton. Kel nodded at me, almost like respect, but it didn't matter. They locked cuffs around my wrists, cold and tight. I was a prisoner again. We marched into the ship, heads down, the forest watching us go. As the doors closed, I glanced back. 5 shapes moved in the fog, tall, thin, silent. They slipped through the shadows, climbing onto the ship's hull. No one else saw. The engines hummed, and we lifted off. I sat in my cell, staring at the wall, my heart racing. The soldiers didn't know. The wardens didn't know. But I did. Those things were with us now, and they weren't done. If you like this story, drop a like and subscribe for more sci-fi stories in the future. If you want more now, check out the recommended videos.